Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Midlife Purpose Project. Before we begin, I want to invite you to join the newsletter. Over the weekend, I hosted my Finding Peace in Turbulent Times workshop, and we really had a great time. And one of the biggest questions that people asked was, how can I find peace? How can I live in peace when I know that there's so much suffering going on in the world? And it just feels kind of wrong. It feels like I need to rage against that suffering and work to make change. How can you say I'm supposed to be content with the present moment as it is and peaceful in the present moment when I know all of this is going on? And ancient wisdom has a lot to say about that. And that's what I'm going to write about in this week's newsletter. How can we live in peace despite what's going on around us while still making a positive impact in our own way? So if you are interested in that, please sign up for this week's newsletter. It should come out on Sunday. I am leaving for vacation in a few days. Actually, tomorrow. That's a lie. I'm losing track of my days. I'm leaving for vacation tomorrow. So I'm hoping to keep everything on track and still get that newsletter out by Sunday. But I promise you, even if it doesn't make it to your inbox by Monday, that is the content that we are going to be talking about in the newsletter. So you can go to my website, katiefarinas.com, and use the newsletter tab at the top to sign up, or use the link in my show notes. All right, now on to this week's episode. Hey, gorgeous souls, and welcome to the Midlife Purpose Project. I'm your host, Katie Farinas, a yoga teacher and soul purpose coach. And just like you, I'm navigating the wild, beautiful, and sometimes messy terrain of midlife. This is the space where we unpack the shifts happening in our bodies, minds, and souls. We're diving deep into the questions that rise up when everything seems to be changing. Think of this as your toolkit for making sense of this powerful phase of life. We'll have honest conversations, belly laughs, maybe a few tears, and a whole lot of growth. We'll hear from experts on topics that matter to you in midlife, and I'll share yogic philosophy that has been helping humans live with more skill and ease for centuries. Because here's the truth. Everything you've been through, every challenge, every joy, every heartbreak, has been training you for this. You're not broken, you're not lost. You're stepping into your power. So come on in, embrace the mess, the beauty, and the absolute magic of midlife. Let's journey together. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Midlife Purpose Project. This week, we are going to be talking about why we stay in situations that we know are no longer serving us. So that could be in a job that's no longer fulfilling or meaningful to you, relationships, toxic environments, whether they be home environments or work environments, old patterns of like habits, belief systems. Why do we stay in them? And what can we do when we know that they're not right for us anymore, that it's time for change? And the reason why we're talking about this topic this week is because over the weekend, I worked my last shift as a bedside nurse, which, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while or you're on my email list, you probably knew was coming. I had mentioned that I had set a date to leave the bedside and I was planning to stick to it, and that date has come. So this past Sunday was my last day as a bedside nurse, and it was a long and winding road to get to this point. I'd spent 20 years at the bedside. I had really lived a lot of my personal life at the bedside. So when I became a nurse, I was newly married, no children. So while being a nurse, I had both of my children. I developed chronic migraine. I parented my daughter through her physical and mental health struggles. We went through a global pandemic, and I fell in love with yoga during this time, and the real roots of yoga, not just the asana practice, but all the philosophy behind it. I became a yoga teacher during this time frame. I really started awakening in my own life during these 20 years. So it was a chapter. It was a very big, meaningful, and important chapter in my life. And because it was a meaningful chapter, it was hard to say goodbye. And yet I knew it was time. Little by little, I could sense that what once felt like home to me started to feel foreign. And I did feel at home as a nurse for many, many years. But over the last several years, I just started to realize that somehow I wasn't quite fitting. I wasn't quite getting the same lit up sensation that I once had from being a nurse. I wasn't getting the same deep satisfaction and meaning from my job. I didn't feel inspired. I felt kind of flat and stuck. And I felt like every time I went to work, I was my life force energy was being sucked out of me. So instead of being, inspired and lit up, I felt the exact opposite. Instead of feeling plugged in as if I were a light, right, in a lamp and I'm going to work, I plugged in and lit up. I felt the exact opposite. I would go to work and it was as if someone were unplugging me and the light was going dim. And that was really, really hard for me to admit because I had loved it for so long and because I knew that my work was meaningful, that I was helping people. And so I really questioned myself, why do you feel this way? You are doing good work. You are positively impacting people's lives. How can that not be bringing you joy and bringing you meaning? What is the matter with you? So many questions I had for myself. I also had a community of people that were like family. 20 years, I worked with many of these people. They were there with me through so many of the challenging things that I experienced during that time. We were very bonded. But despite them being amazing, compassionate, loving people, I started to feel a disconnect because I had changed so much over that time. And somehow, even though I still love them, respect them, cherish them, are grateful for them, I didn't feel like we were on the same wavelength anymore. And that is not a judgment. That is just the truth, right? I didn't feel at home with them anymore. We didn't want to talk about the same things. We weren't interested in the same things. We weren't watching or reading the same things. Our awareness was in completely different places. It was just really hard to feel that disconnect, to be sitting amongst people who I really did love and respect so much, and yet feeling disconnected at the same time. I also started to realize that the culture no longer served me. Healthcare really rewards sympathetic activation. So there are loud bells and alarms going off all the time. There's an overwhelming number of people on the unit. There are patient loads that are often way too high and prevent you from being able to take a lunch break or go to the bathroom, when you need to go to the bathroom. There's emergencies that you're always running into. It's really a lot on your nervous system to be in healthcare. When I was younger, that felt really exciting. It felt meaningful. It felt important. But over time, with the changes in my mind and in my body, but also in my belief system, it started to just feel exhausting. It also felt against who I was and what I believed in. Our healthcare system has a long way to go when it comes to protecting our healthcare workers and making sure that they are cared for as well as they care for their patients. And so I actually tried to bring that into my healthcare system, but it's a change in culture, and changing culture takes time. And so I felt like this culture feels toxic to me now. It no longer serves me. It's draining me, and I have to step away from it. So shift after shift, I would come home more and more tired, more and more disillusioned, feeling honestly broken. I would come home feeling broken and like I had nothing left to give my family. And I felt this urge for change coming for years, but I wanted to deny it. I wanted to push it away. Quite frankly, I wanted to act like a toddler, plug my ears, close my eyes, stamp my feet, and scream, no, 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 because I was grasping and clinging onto an old version of myself, a version of myself that fit in with the people, that enjoyed the culture, that was lit up by their job. Um, a person who used to feel like home in this profession, in this environment, but she was gone. That person no longer existed. And I couldn't make her come back. No matter what I did, she has passed and gone. And I had to accept that. And here's what happens. Here's what truth does. Truth stands beside you while you're acting like a toddler and you're resisting and you're screaming no and you're stamping your feet. Truth has an energy and a presence that will not be ignored. And like a calm and grounded parent figure to a screaming toddler, it stands and it waits for you to stop throwing a tantrum, to stop resisting, to become exhausted by the fight that you are having with yourself. And then it calmly and quietly asks, are you ready now? And this went on for me for a couple of years, throwing a tantrum, truth standing beside me, waiting, waiting, waiting. Every once in a while, checking in, are you ready now? Only for me to go right back to throwing my tantrum again. But after 2 years of fighting, I knew. I knew that the bedside was no longer my way of expressing my Dharma. It was no longer my home. And by continuing to go there, I was not only dimming my light, I was abandoning myself. I was clogging up my prana, my life force energy. I was ignoring my intuition, which started out as a whisper, but by the end was screaming at me. And I was not serving the world in the way I was meant to serve the world in this stage of my life. And so, if you've listened to some of my episodes on Dharma, you may remember that Dharma is a function of two variables, essence and expression. And I will link some Dharma episodes in the show notes. So, if you haven't heard one before, you can get to know this concept on a deeper level. But our Dharma is our essence and our expression. So the essence piece is constant. It comes into this world with us, it remains with us our entire lifetime here, and it leaves with us when we leave this earthly plane. It does not change. It's who we are at the deepest level. But the way in which we express that Dharma will likely change many times over your lifetime. So for me, I was expressing my Dharma for many years as a nurse, but the time has come where that expression of my Dharma no longer fits. And I have to change. I have to move on to a new expression, or I will stay in this pain. And I am not uncommon, right? This is what I do with my clients. This is the conversations we have about why we remain in suffering when we don't have to. And the answer really comes down to the same thing. Everyone really comes back to the same reason that they abandon themselves, which is fear. For me, I can rattle off a list of fears for you when I was going through this. So some of them were fear that I wouldn't be financially successful, fear that I don't have what it takes to run a business, fear that people would judge me and think I was crazy for leaving a steady, well-paying job, fear that I'm not good enough to help people on their spiritual journey, fear of losing my identity as a nurse. And that one was a surprise to me when it came through. But if you think about it, nursing is a well-respected and easily understood profession. So throughout the past 20 years, when people would ask me, "What do you do?" and I would say, "I'm a nurse," they immediately understood what that was, and they often showed a great deal of respect toward me, knowing that that was my profession. But now when I say I'm a life coach and a podcaster and a spiritual teacher, I get heads that are kind of cocked to the side, some silence, a little awkwardness, some slightly judgy questions about, are you sure you can make a living doing that? It's much less comfortable than the conversation I would have when I say I'm a nurse. Fear of not being useful. Why, will my work be positively impactful? Something that is very important to me. And I spent years wrestling with those fears. And in the end, I still don't have any of the answers to those questions. But I have one very important answer, and that's that this is the right decision. And I'm sure you're asking yourself, well, how can you know that? If you don't know the answers to any of those questions, how do you know that this is the right decision? And I know because I've learned to trust in myself. I've learned to trust in the universe and the divine guidance that it's sending me. And I've learned to believe in the words of the Bhagavad Gita, which is, it is better to do your own dharma and fail than to do another's dharma and succeed. And ultimately, I have faith. I have faith in God, the universe, my soul. I have faith in my heart that this dream was placed there for a reason. And I know that as a nurse, there are a lot of pieces of being a nurse that are part of my essence that I will carry forward with me. So while I'm saying goodbye to that expression, as I mentioned, I'm taking the essence with me. As a nurse, I loved the one-on-one interactions with my patients. I loved establishing a trusting relationship with them. I loved teaching them. I loved empowering them to trust their own intuition and advocate for themselves and their care. I loved being a safe space where they felt held and cared for. And all of these things I bring forward with me because they are my essence. And it's how I work with my clients. Those one-on-one intimate interactions, the trusting relationship, the teaching, the empowering, the intuition, all of it, the safe space. It's all part of my coaching because it's part of who I am. It's not it's not a job, it's not a profession, it's my essence. I do it in my workshops, and I am planning to host retreats in the future, and I plan to bring all of that with me because I can't not bring it with me. You never have to fear changing because the real you, the you underneath the titles, the roles, the accolades, the achievements, it never changes. It's eternal. It's never born. It never dies. It just changes form. And it changes form here on earth as you move through new stages and phases of your life. So for me, it's changing form from being a nurse to moving into life coaching and spiritual teaching. And it changes when you leave this earthly plane, but it goes with you. It never it never leaves you because it's who you are, and you are never born and you are never die. It is formless, ageless, and timeless. It is constant. And once we know that, once we can let go of the fear of somehow leaving ourselves behind, we don't have to be afraid of change. We can feel safe in the truth of who we are. So I invite you this week to get a piece of paper and pen or a journal and think about this journaling prompt. What would you do if you weren't afraid? If you couldn't fail, if no one would judge you, and you knew you were good enough, what would you do? This is a really great journaling exercise for anyone who is feeling like I was feeling like, I don't know what happened, but this life I used to love, whether it be your job, or anything else just doesn't feel right anymore. It doesn't feel like home, feels like it's suffocating you, feels like you're stuck, feels like your life force energy is being drained or being unplugged, right? This is the question to start asking yourself. What would I do if I weren't afraid? Set a timer for 10 minutes and put pen to paper and let it flow. Don't stop writing until the timer goes off. So sometimes, you know, my clients, I ask them this question and it's like deer in the headlights. They're like, I have no idea. I don't even know what to write on the paper. That's okay. Your higher self will come in and will write through you if you just keep writing. So even if you have to write, I don't know, many times over, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, just keep writing. It will start to pour out. And then at the end of the 10 minutes and take more if you're really you got yourself going and it's all coming, you don't have to restrict yourself to 10 minutes. But when you're complete, when it feels like you have written down everything you need to write down during that session, then spend some time reflecting on it. Look back. What are you fearing? What do you really want? And what is keeping you from it? What are the fears that popped up? And are they realistic? Are they something that to you can learn to let go of, right? And then ask yourself, how can I take a micro step in that direction today? So, whatever it was that came out that you would do if you weren't afraid, what could you do today that is a teeny tiny step towards that larger goal? And if you do that, if you take that teeny tiny step, pay attention to how you feel. Your body and mind will tell you if you're moving in the right direction because they will both come alive. Just like that lamp I mentioned, it'll be as if someone picked up the cord off the floor and plugged it in, plugged you in. And then you know you're going in the right direction. All right, guys, I would love to hear what answers come during your journaling exercise. Please send them to me. I would just love to hear what comes out. So send me an email at katie@katiefarinas.com. Or you can message me. I'm on Instagram, Threads, and Substack now. So you can pick your favorite platform, the platform of your choice, and message me through one of those routes. Or like I said, just send me an email. Everything is under Katie Farinas, so I'm very easy to find. But I want to hear what comes through for you, not only what you would do if you weren't afraid, but also what fears came through and maybe where you think those fears are coming from, which we can talk about in another episode, but little bit at a time, right? Little bit at a time. I will also say that it is amazing what happens when we get plugged in again, when we start to be lit up again. I had my last shift on Sunday. On Monday, I went to my typical Monday morning yoga class as a student, not as a teacher. I am not a morning person. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that on this podcast, but I'm a really terrible morning person. And so I do go to yoga often in the morning, but because I'm a bad morning person, I am getting there usually very last minute, typically the last person to enter the class. So I, put my stuff away, I throw my mat down, and class begins. And I had my class as usual. And at the end of class, someone who I've taken practice with over the many years now, who was not close to me in class, which this person was, pretty much on the opposite end of the room that we were practicing in, came over to me and said, there's something really different about your energy today. What's going on? And I said, well, I finally stopped abandoning myself. I finally listened to myself and I let the old version of me go. And I stepped fully and completely into this new version of myself with a tremendous amount of gratitude. So that is what happens when we start listening to that inner calling and following our soul's purpose. It changes us on the inside and then it changes us on the outside. And then we change other people for the better. All right, guys, I would love to hear from you. As always, have a beautiful week. Namaste, my friends. Thank you for joining me on this journey of self-discovery here at the Midlife Purpose Project. I hope today's conversation sparked something deep inside of you, made you laugh, or reminded you that you are never alone. Remember, it's never too late to reconnect with your soul's purpose and live a life of meaning. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show, or share it with someone who could use a little inspiration. It really helps the show reach more women and helps me keep the content ad-free. Join me next time as we continue to explore what it means to live with purpose in midlife.